Many IT teams at medical organizations in general, are looking to modernize their IT infrastructure, manage growing costs by moving to either on-prem cloud, hybrid cloud, or even multi-cloud. The Cloudian Hyperstore provides a world-class object storage solution for these organizations, but many are often unsure about how to provide end users access to their data in a safe and secure manner that is able to be fully audited and in compliance with a range of both best practice as well as compliance standards. That's where Storage Made Easy's File Fabric comes in. It provides a single pane of glass for all of your organization's storage, both on-prem and in the cloud, providing fine-grained NTFS-like permissions that your organization is using currently, and sitting on top of disparate pools of storage, allowing users to have a very user-friendly interface for their storage, both web, mobile, desktop, as well as IT teams being able to secure their data as required. So we'll take a look now and see some of those features. This is the File Fabric web interface. I'm logged in currently as administrator. The administrator is responsible for adding the pools of storage, defining policies, and then integrating with existing authentication systems like Active Directory or federated logins through things like SAML for ADFS, Okta, OneLogin, etc. Here we can see I've gone and added my different pools of storage. So that includes both on-prem NAS as well as Cloudian Hyperstore and all of its lifecycle management, or even directly off to cloud storage like Microsoft Azure, or SaaS services like SharePoint, OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, etc. Once that storage is added, we will then go and index that and provide a file system-like UI within the web for that storage. From there, organizations and IT teams are able to go and define what are the folders they want shared out across the organization. So for example, if you're using your Cloudian Hyperstore for a range of different solutions, both active archive of medical imaging or medical documents, as well as backup or recovery type use cases, you may not want your backup to be visible through the file fabric. And it's as simple as not converting that to a shared team folder, and instead going and selecting one of the folders within your environment and deciding to share that out across the team. We can do that real simply. So for example, if I go to Finance, let me stop sharing, and I'll show you how simple it is to go and create a new share from a folder that exists in a bucket in my Hyperstore. All right, so I go back, right-click on Finance, say Convert to a Share Team folder. We'll then change that icon. Now we have a little person icon. We get a little tooltip saying that by default, no access is being provided to this folder. So secure by default. But I can right-click, I can go now to the option of permissions. And what we'll see is, as I talked about at the top, NTFS-like permissions being applied into this folder on my Hyperstore through the File Fabric access. Right, so here we can see no access here, but I can come in and I can now select my users and groups, again, being pulled in from my existing Active Directory, LDAP, or SAML environment. So I don't have to recreate my users and groups within the File Fabric. I'm able to go and select those same roles within my Active Directory and provide that functionality, that access, right? So I can say Finance has read and write access to this folder. Click Apply. There we go. So the next time a user from the finance team logs in, either through the web interface or through any of the desktop tools or mobile, if that's allowed, right, we'll take a look. We'll see what shared team folders are available and then what folders align with the access for the finance team. Because the default is no access, as you would imagine, someone in the IT team logs into the File Fabric, they won't even see the finance folder. Right, but let's say you wanted to give further permissions to that IT team. We may want them to be able to upload and move files, but not create subfolders, not rename, right, and not delete. Right? So we can do that sort of fine-grained permission within here as well. The key thing of note is, as you would expect within a share like you're doing on your existing storage, we'll also do inheritance of subfolders. And it's very simple for me to break that inheritance, right? So maybe I don't want IT to be able to see this subfolder at all. So let's just go back to Finance and just give Finance full access. There you have it. Simple to do, easy to do, and provides a user-friendly interface for those users to go and access and interact with that data. So let's now take a look at that from a end user perspective. So here we have the medical imaging team. And let's sign in as this user. Again, in this case, my demo, I just have a generic user. These would be your actual users within your environment. In here, we'll see, as opposed to that view that we saw before of all my different pools of storage scattered all over the place, for an end user, I see a single tree just of the folders I have access to, and just based on those permissions within the system. So that may be things like my shared folder from my NAS, my medical folder from my Cloudian on-prem, and maybe a cold archive folder where I've archived my data off to the public cloud in order to have that lowest cost of storage available in those cold tiers. But let's drill deeper in. So from the medical, right, I can come through. As mentioned, the file fabric is accessible both within the web as well as desktop. But if I may want to be able to use this from my medical imaging side to go and quickly view things like my DICOM files stored out in my Cloudian Hyperstore, it's simple enough for me to come in here. I can go and see these files, click the little preview icon, and that will go and fetch that from my Cloudian. And within the browser, actually show me a preview of these DICOM files right within here. I can look at info, see existing information, sort of file system metadata associated with this. We also have a built-in commenting system. So if we wanted to do collaboration based on some of these files, it's simple enough for me to be able to go in here and collaborate and type notes on this file directly. But maybe you're already using a tool like Microsoft Teams or something similar in order to do your sharing collaboration. And you may not want to comment on it here, but maybe share this with a team or a group within your organization. Maybe not DICOM files, maybe things like my Office suite files. Let's go over to the share. We can take a look. So for example, maybe we have a PowerPoint I want to share with members of my team through Microsoft Teams. Right, so we've got a very simple integration, both able to share and view this data directly within Microsoft Teams, or from the web, I'm able to come here and I can share with the team from within here. Right, so very simply come within here, generates that link, I can come and I can search for whatever that team name may be associated with that, right? And I will go and automatically share that link. Now anybody within Microsoft Teams will see that link being posted. They can click within there, right within the Teams view, go and access and see that file through the file fabric into that data. But while the web interface is great for navigating, seeing that preview, we know many organizations and many users are still used to using desktop UI, map drives and things like that for their workflows or their applications. And the file fabric provides a rich mapped drive-like capability within the file fabric. And we call that Cloud Drive. So here we see I've got a drive called my U drive. If I double click it, I've already logged in as that same imaging user. And just like we saw before, I now have those 3 folders. So this provides SMB-like interface, but it's actually using our HTTPS API. So it's able to work fine across the WAN if you were to allow that for your end users. And provides a caching of the metadata, so I'm able to go and browse out to my storage. In this case, not large, but this could be petabytes of data stored within a mix of my hybrid cloud or multi-cloud environment. And to the end user desktop, it just appears as a folder structure that I can then go and navigate through. And what happens then is when I select a file and go to access it, we'll retrieve it through our HTTPS API, download it to the user's desktop, and then open it up in whatever document editor, imaging viewer, etc. that a user has within their local desktop to view and access that data. So that obviously allows them to go and interact with that now in their native environment and not have to relearn how to go and access the data, allowing users to continue to have that same workflow and same flow within their native desktop side. And so jumping back now into my admin interface, we'll touch on a couple more things from security and compliance perspective. Obviously, as we saw, the file fabric allows organizations to continue to leverage their existing user and group manage permissions, have users be able to either have an advanced file manager view on the web of their data or back on their desktop, a traditional Explorer or Finder view of that data. Um, but in addition, one thing that the file fabric can do is provide that compliance requirements within the environment. So, first, if we take a look, we know many organizations, both from either a compliance perspective or just from a monthly review and auditing perspective, will want to do things like do a permissions report to be able to generate a list of all of the folders in the environment, who has access to them, and why. And so just do real quick, we'll take a look here. Here we can see we've got a root folder called medical. We can see the users associated with that, and we can see why it's granted to them and whether it's set at that folder or inherited from up above. So this allows me to now go and I can take a look and generate a full audit trail of the folders, who has access to that data and why. If I needed to provide this to an auditor, for example, I can go and export that via CSV. In addition, I mentioned a audit trail, right? So everything that occurs within the system all is audited within the file fabric audit trail. So here we can see the activity types. So we can see actually this is the DICOM file that I looked on my desktop. So we can see what that activity was, what type, a download in this case, by whom. It's my generic imaging user, but again, this would be your user's login information from Active Directory. The time, the date that they came in, and what tool. So all that activity, login activity, right? I'm able to go and see that. I can potentially filter down, and maybe I wanted to see everything that this user's done so far this month. Right, we can generate that list. I'm able to see all that here. I can then export that CSV, zip, PDF. We can also take this data and export it real time off to existing syslog servers, or even potentially feed into an existing event management system, or things like Splunk or Logstash as well, to give that full audit trail of all that activity that occurs in the system. The other thing that is useful to medical organizations in general, but any sort of organization that has compliance requirements, is our content detection and content discovery. Right? So what this allows us to do is, as files are uploaded into the system, we can parse through those files, pulling out strings that match certain criteria to try to define a certain classification of a file. So for example, this could be PHI. Right? So maybe things like in the US, social security numbers, maybe you have a specific patient or practitioner ID number that you'd want to search on. Right, so here we can actually see in my web interface, I've got a little folder, and here we can see I've detected things that look like PHI uploaded into the system. So obviously within the UI, I can have this little notification. We can also see this little exclamation mark showing here that somewhere within this folder we have things that look like protected health information stored within the system. So I can drill deeper down, I can see that file all within here. Obviously, it's a good first step to alert within the interface, but we can also then go and provide automated actions based on the discovery of that data. So for example, here we can see when we detect a file that has PHI uploaded into the system, what do we want to do? Maybe it's, let's just send emails to anybody in a specific role within my organization, right? Or maybe it's not somebody within the file fabric, it's just a generic, maybe data governance organization alias within my system. We talked about some of those file sharing. Maybe we want to disable that. We say, well, you can share files, but not PHI. We're going to disable the ability to create any sort of shared URLs for PHI. Or finally, if there's any sort of either quarantine, data sovereignty, we can actually take, and as soon as we detect that PHI uploaded into the system, we'll be able to go and move that from the folder that we found it in into another folder, maybe attaching a suffix or something like that to have somebody be able to go and review that. So that allows you to automatically have the system detect the files that are being uploaded, and if they are things that need to be alerted or need to be moved, that can be done automatically. Finally, when we are parsing through those files, one of the issues that organizations see is that data now is sprawled across multiple different locations and environments, and how can we allow users to easily go and discover and find that data? So within the file fabric, we've got our search interface, basically allowing you to take your local data, create a local indexable, searchable database for users to quickly go and find the files that they're looking for. Obviously, they may be simple things like the file name starts with, ends with. If you've got naming conventions that allow them to easily find that data, but potentially you may want them to just do sort of freeform. I'm looking for community health within these files. So we click that search, and now we can see, in this case, a bunch of XML files. We've got community health and hospitals listed within the content. So obviously, this patient 103 XML file doesn't have anything about community health in the name, but we've actually gone through and parsed that file to be able to pull out those strings. Now, the key thing of note is all of these search results are filtered based on what a user has access to in the system. So if we were to jump back into that imaging user and do that search, we'll see vastly different results. So now log back in as the imaging user, right? I'll do that same search, that search for community health, where as the admin, of course, we saw many pages of results. In this case, this user does not have access to any of the folders that contain that data. So we don't even get a listing of the files that are associated with that within there. So again, the file fabric now allows medical organizations, financial services organizations, really any IT services in general that are looking to move towards the public cloud or a hybrid or multi-cloud, especially leveraging things like the Cloudian Hyperstore, to be able to both expose that data to their end users using existing users and groups through Active Directory, LDAP, or SAML, apply permissions like they're used to doing, so NTFS-like permissions, through the file fabric for that data that's stored on the Hyperstore or other storage locations, providing a user-friendly interface within the web or desktop if they're using existing tools and they see a map network drive that accesses that data with whatever permissions that are applied. And then finally, allowing your IT team to have a full compliance and audit trail of all that activity as the users interact with that data. And then even things like advanced search capabilities and then content discovery of the data to allow you to detect if PHI or other types of account data or protected data is stored within your system to be alerted and potentially take action upon that automatically. Thank you for your time today. Hope this was informative and meets and can solve a lot of the problems that you're facing as an organization. Thank you.